Tata, who was the deputy commander in Afghanistan. General, now we have three men, David Haines, Stephen Sotloff, and of course James Foley. They stood for our values. They stood for the Western world. They stood for enlightenment and helping people against the nihilistic philosophy of this Islamic jihad that we see as evidenced by ISIS. It is the challenge of our time. Can we stop them?
Well, I think Christian laid out the entire scenario very well. The Uganda operation is linked to al-Shabaab and Somalia, which is linked to what's happening in Syria and Iraq. And there's this ideology of hatred of the West that is binding everything together. And that's why we need a holistic approach to countering Islamist extremism, and why I've been repeating that it's important to identify our enemy, and we're not going to make any progress in this unless we properly identify the enemy and properly go after this enemy in a very measured and calculated way. This is far more than some people in a room with a laptop. As a previous commentator said, this is 30,000 people in Syria, in Iraq, in Somalia, in Uganda, across the northern tier.
General,
so,
I'm sorry we're out of time. You were right, and it's a growing global menace. Thank you so much.
And our reporting continues now. Breaking news here on the Fox Report. I'm Julie Banderas. New video emerging that purportedly shows ISIS terrorists executing British hostage David Haines. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us now by phone. And Catherine, what do we know?
Well, Julie, in the last few minutes, I've been able to view the video, and I'd like to provide our viewers some details, but not all of the details, because it's so graphic. This video really is a carbon copy of the previous two execution videos we've seen from ISIS of the two American journalists, Stephen Sotloff and James Foley. There are, though, some striking differences. Number one, this begins with video of the British Prime Minister. The previous began with video of the American President Barack Obama. This video is described a message to America's allies. There is then a statement from what we believe to be David Haines, and I would emphasize to our viewers that this is a statement that is given under duress. And then there is a statement from the executioner, and it does appear to be the same British citizen speaking. And what was interesting to me, Julie, is that there are some contemporaneous references to news events in this speech. We did not see this before, and this should help investigators date when the execution took place. And then it closes with the execution. It's extremely graphic. You see the head placed on the body afterwards. This is the same as we've seen in the previous videos. And then there is a new person identified as a British hostage, and the threat is the same, that if the U.S. and its allies continue down this path, that this will be the next individual to be executed by ISIS.
How does the United States go about verifying this video?
Well, the verification is pretty standard in these cases. First and foremost, they want to identify what I would call sort of the first person to post the video on the web, because then they can start to work backwards electronically to see who they are connected to, because that is clearly the inner circle. And since the first two videos have been posted, there have been instructions that have been provided to ISIS followers on how to evade investigators. They're going to look at the scenery to see if it seems to be in the same geographic area, and then they're going to do a voice analysis on the executioner and try to determine if it's the same individual. But I don't think that there is any doubt. I did notice in this particular video that his eyes are more covered than they have been in previous videos. And I think that that's a nod to the fact that he understands that investigators have identified who he is. And then finally, they're going to be looking at it for sort of these time references. When was it recorded? And I think it will be pretty easy to determine based on some of these references to airstrikes in northern Iraq.
Catherine, to remind viewers of David Haines and who he was taken hostage in March of last year. He was in Syria working for the Agency for Technical Cooperation and Development. He was there aiding tens of thousands of refugees. Catherine, you talk about the differences between the two prior beheadings and this one, and here's another difference. This was not a journalist. They used those two journalists at first to sort of use them as a message to get out to the rest of the world. This man was there helping others. He was not there reporting on the violence and on the terrorists.
This is true, but I would say that also in this forced script that is given prior to the execution, he says, I am paying because at one point I worked for the Royal Air Force. I was a member of the military. And if you recall, Julie, in the James Foley video, he says part of the reason he has been selected is because he has a brother who was in the U.S. military. So I think that that may well be part of the connection.
The connection then not being a journalist, but being affiliated with the military.
Correct.
The military that are going after these terrorists. And with President Obama this week talking about how we are going to be increasing airstrikes to go after them, I would imagine when they essentially show the rest of the world that there are more hostages waiting on the sidelines to be given the same kind of treatment, they're trying to send a message. Now the job for investigators is a difficult one because they are obviously up against time before this happens again.
Just to jump in, I don't think there's much doubt that this video is authentic.
Yeah.
I think that's just a matter of checking some of the boxes. Unfortunately, we reported on Fox Friday, based on a military source, that after information about the failed rescue attempt for James Foley was released by the administration, that the remaining hostages were dispersed to multiple locations, making it harder for them to be rescued. Prior to that, based on my reporting, we believe that they were being held together, and we don't believe that's the case anymore.
And so what are investigators going to be looking for now?
Well, I think one of the most important elements here is the electronic trail. Who posted that video? How are they in the inner circle of ISIS? How long did it take for them to post? Do the time references in the video suggest that this execution took place before or after the president's address to the nation about ISIS? But in some respects, what this tells us more about is the psyche of this organization and some details on where they may be located, but some of these details are really well known at this point. The question is the best way to present or go forward, because this is a war of ideas too, and this is a propaganda war. This is just not a battle that can be won with military, or as they like to say, kinetic action.
I want you to react to this. The UK Prime Minister, David Cameron, who, as you know, had recently elevated the terror threat level in Britain for fear that Britons would become victims. And here he is tweeting the following: "The murder of David Haines is an act of pure evil. My heart goes out to his family, who have shown extraordinary courage and fortitude. We will do everything in our power to hunt these murderers down and ensure they face justice, however long it takes."
Well, what David Cameron is doing is he's confirming that it is David Haines, a British citizen, and that these events are not going to disrupt the plan that we have set into place. You're going to have to excuse me. I have a lot of children over here right now, and I'm going to have to drop off. I apologize.
No, that's, of course, I understand.
My husband's deployed, and I am on my own.
Yeah, no, and I totally understand. Trust me, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us, and I know how difficult that can be.
I'm sorry about